Hello, and welcome to the South Coast Artists Index, where artists, performers, and writers, as well as curators, directors, and supporters, anyone with ties to the creative community, drops by to introduce themselves to you. We'll talk about their beginnings, their vision, their passion, and so much more. The South Coast Artist Index podcast is brought to you in part by Heavenly Spirits, who invites you to celebrate the art of life and creative communities everywhere. Learn more at heavenlyspirits.com.
Hi, this is Ron Fortier with another In Focus podcast brought to you by theartistindex.com and supported by our friends at Heavenly Spirits Imports and in collaboration with the New Bedford Whaling Museum and the Common Ground Project, as well as the Mass Cultural Council. And we have a guest who will introduce themselves as per usual. And let's get into it. Guest?
Hi there. I'm James L. Murdoch. That's M-U-R-D-O-C-K. I live in Mid-Coast Maine, Thomaston, Maine, which is right next, it bumps into Rockland, which is really a sister fishing city of New Bedford. And when we first came to Rockland, it was pretty cool because it would come out, oh, you're from New Bedford. I was immediately everybody's friend, you know? So there's a long history of fishing and piracy between these two places. And Rockland is a beautiful, large harbor. Thomaston was a huge shipbuilding hub. We were the second shipbuilders in the state of Maine after the Kennebec in Bath. Amazing, huge ships built on this little muddy saltwater river. And so either side of the river, we have the Cushing Peninsula, Cushing and Friendship, you know, Andrew Wyeth's country, and the St. George Peninsula on the eastern side of the river. And Thomaston's at a point where the river gets really wide. It becomes really a saltwater inlet. Which is, you know, Maine has got peninsulas all over the place. But this area, there's a lot of, an awful lot of artists. Some of them you'll never meet and see. They're all hiding out in the woods, and there's, you know, famous people and not famous people here. And very much like New Bedford, Rockland was turned around through the arts. And it's now a big art mecca. There's all these art galleries and stuff in the Main Street area. But where I live in Thomaston, at its height, like New Bedford, it was one of the, I don't know, it had the exact number. They had 3 out of 5 millionaires in the country at the time lived in Thomaston. That's how thriving the shipbuilding was. It's amazing. And they built these huge ships. I don't know how they did it through the winter. And I wound up here after leaving Swain School. I graduated in '81 with a BFA in sculpture. I went there to study painting, and I immediately got hooked on sculpture. I picked up metal, you put a torch in my hand, and that was it. There was no looking back. I had to have hot metal, bend it, cut it, weld it. So I got into that a big time. But we wound up in this area of Maine because I wanted to investigate wooden boat building. I came across a book about it in Kansas City. I lived there for a year after graduating, and I couldn't believe it. And as a sculptural form, I was like, and then I found out, wow, there's some places in Maine that the actual schools, you know, one of them's tuition free. I want to go check that out because we wanted to come back to the coast, but I grew up on Cape Cod. I consider myself a living in self-imposed exile here in Maine, but it's where I am too, although it's changing. It's very much similar to how it was in Cape Cod growing up. It's a New England seacoast village life. In Maine, it's just like, if there's a tiny little harbor, there's a tiny little town there, and it's all like that. And that's how it is in this area, you know, which I love. But it wasn't an option for Cindy and I. We really didn't. The suburban thing came to Cape Cod big time, like a wave. and there was nothing there for me. And thank God for Swain School. You know, everybody was mortified and scared that I was going to go to New Bedford, but Swain was great. And I vividly remember maybe my second day of school crossing from the Crapo across the street to the Rodman Studio D, the Courier building for classes, and seeing all the people switching classes. And it hit me, oh, I think I like this place. Everybody is really weird, like me, you know, having gone through the high school thing where, you know, we were definitely a minority weirdo as artists, and we would run and hide in our art room, and that was our, you know, our refuge. So we've been in Maine here since 1982. And you know, there was no looking back. My family was, my mother, I remember especially, is like, you'll be back. You can't survive in Maine. You'll starve to death. There's nothing but rocks and potatoes in Maine. And her family was from Maine. So my daughter is the first, we skipped 2 generations. She's the first maniac born back into the Thomas Murdoch line, which is great, you know. So it turns out I have a family connection here on my mother's side that goes way back to the late 1600s.
Yeah, my stepsister.
Thomas family came with the Solmeses and settled Mount Desert Island. And
Martha Stewart's hometown now. She's on Mount
yes,
yeah,
my good friend who got me into that, really helped me out with blacksmithing, did a gate for her.
Yeah,
it was one of the last projects he did.
Yeah.
He did a huge amount of Steve Alsop did a huge amount of iron work on the island. And so yeah, here we are in my shop. I'm downshifted big time. I wrecked my shoulder in April. I had surgery over 2 months ago, and it's not completely successful. I may be heading for a shoulder replacement. It looks that way. So
what a drag it is getting old, huh?
I haven't been doing the metalworking, and I had just, like last winter this time, it was my first real winter I spent in this new building. This building is about 4 years old now, although it looks ancient. I cranked out a lot of stuff, so I was poised, and I've got all kinds of ideas for, I don't know if I can flip this around for sculptures, but a lot of these wire things you see are models for larger outside sculptures, and so I can't do any of that. And
Time to get yourself an assistant.
I started to, yeah, well, if I could afford it, you know, if I had,
you might be able to write a grant for it.
if I had the money or the project, I would have no problem doing that. I built 13 custom homes without employees. I've always just brought different people in, and you know, some pretty intense projects. So yeah, I would love the opportunity for that. Does any young people out there come up for the summer? You can have your own little camp. There's a little camp out there without electricity. We lived in that for a couple of years, 3 summers before we built our house.
I mean,
So
sculptors.
I don't know where that's heading. I'm hopeful that I'll get back to it, just because I'm dying to get these sculptures done.
Well, I mean,
and after that, it's like, okay. But lately I've been doing painting, and I started painting with my left hand because I was in a sling. And I don't know if I can make a walk through here.
Those small pieces are gorgeous, by the way. They're little jewels.
Thank you. Very unexpected result with these.
I mean, they look huge when you consider the size of them.
Yeah,
so the whole scale.
When you photograph them and you post just that photo of them, but here's a bunch of them kind of lined up, and it's interesting, somewhat of a chronological order, but I put smearing the paint on really thick, so there's some of them are still slow to dry. But this one was the first one. And why? Because my right side, I'm right-handed,
Mhm.
so couldn't let go of this rendering, make a realistic image, all that.
Mhm.
And I was like, left-handed, I'm going to do abstract expressionism. That's what I want to do.
Mhm.
So I had to got that out of my brain right away. And I immediately went into all these other strange ones. Like this.
Mhm.
And I realized right away that it's not my hand so much, but it was my brain was kind of doing a different thing of just imagery.
Mhm. And
And even though I try to start out abstract, there's always a narrative that creeps into my paintings, it seems, which is
yeah,
fun.
that's always been the big challenge for an abstract painter. I mean, take it from me, I did it for decades. Prided myself on painting nothing and all that other good stuff. And it's really, really difficult to do that because your mind does not like chaos. Your mind doesn't like not knowing things. So you put
And
two
that
elements in there and boom, it'll make something out of it.
depends on who you are too. I'm more of an intuitive artist. And when I work with my metal, and I've done a number of these figures so far, a plan for me is a starting point, and something happens along the way. It's usually random. And if I'm paying attention, it often turns into something really amazing. And I go with that. And the other type of painting, so it's not abstract, but it's more kind of an intuitive going with it. So my goal is always just to keep whatever this is channeling through me, just keep it going. Don't think about it. And when I start thinking about it, that's when I quit for the day. I mean, I come in the morning and go, I don't like that color. I like this color or something like that. But otherwise, I leave it alone. But there's a lot of great painters out there, and they're very into the science of painting, and they're painting for painters, really. And they do these amazing things with space and color and all that.
Bruce Lee had this thing about, from his Be Like Water consciousness. And, he said his intellect and his intuition, you can't have, you have to try to have a balance, because if you're too intellectual, it becomes mechanical and it becomes soulless.
Yes.
And if it's too intuitive, then it lacks form. It lacks structure. So you have to have a really good blend to the two of them,
Yeah.
And it makes sense.
Yeah.
And
well, here's something I wanted to throw out, because I had a house project, and I don't know if that's reading backwards or not. Is it?
Yeah, I mean, we're not going to have video on the podcast, but that's we can post these up on the
Oh, okay.
podcast.
Yeah. All right. Well, but so you could see this.
Website, yeah.
I was building two houses at once for this client, and I had an architect involved,
right,
long distance, and he was, like every architect I've ever worked with, like major ego. And I'm pretty, I'm a Scotsman, and at a certain point I'll growl back, but I'm a pretty humble guy. But he asked me, James, what's your process? What's your process? It's like, I want to know what your process is. And I thought about it. I said, because I just had this vision of this in my head when he said that. I said, I'm going to get back to you on that tomorrow. And I did, because I immediately drew this out. And this is what I go through for a process as a problem-solving method. It starts with design at the top of this triangle, which is the vision and the idea. And then you have this other big point is engineering. And then you have implementation. And so design goes from boom to engineering, and engineering says, well, we can do this, but we can't do that, or there's limits or whatever, and throws it back and forth. But eventually it goes to implementation. And then again, there's an exchange of ideas. Things grow out of that. You try to implement something and it doesn't go the way you think it's going to, for whatever reason, you alter that. You alter your approach. So there's a communication that happens between those three things. And outside of this, you have constraint in energy. And that gives cohesion.
Mhm.
What you were talking about with the abstract, it gives you some cohesion to this thing. So it starts to spin and move around without some kind of constraint. Just pure energy, it would just
spin itself out.
right. It would burn itself out, fly apart in pieces. So, so anyways, that's my official thing on that.
I want to get back to the whole sculpture thing, because from all the sculptors I've known, their biggest problem is baggage. They've got way more baggage, and I don't mean emotional. They have way more baggage than most people do. And obviously everything that they do is, a lot of them, for a majority of their careers, they never get out of the maquette stage. They never get out of the model stage because cost, obviously, cost is going to equate to sale price, finding a buyer,
Right.
finding the right, you know the whole routine. So
Yep.
seriously, at this point, I mean, if you, I don't know if there's I'm sure there's a Maine cultural council, a Maine culture, arts and culture council or whatever, but there's grants, and believe me, the grants today are nothing like they used to be 40 years ago, where you had to open up a vein. Some of them are like just a basic questionnaire, and you put up your resume and a couple of images, and boom, you're done.
Oh,
And
really?
if you could get yourself a couple of one at least, but I mean at least a couple of young people who need to work with a master, and it's an opportunity of a lifetime, and they could be roughing it in that camp, like you said. And my God, what a horrible way to spend the summer. You know?
Well, they have to put up with me, but there's my beautiful queen who,
Yeah.
if you're around her, that's a great thing. So
Yeah. In fact, we've got to get Cynthia on the show as well. And I did tell you that the next time, my brother's on a vacation right now. He's a maniac, so I hope he's really chilling out with his wife. That the next time we head up there, that I'm going to make some time to stop by and visit you guys, because I mean, generally I like to get off and to go into the coastal highway, and we come out right by Moody's, before you get into Bucksport.
Yeah, I'm 20 minutes from Moody's.
Yeah. Well, which in Maine time is like a second, because like, oh, it's just on the road. How long is that? An hour and a half.
That's nothing.
The difference between, was it Maine traffic and Boston traffic is, in Maine, at least you travel in miles. In Boston, you travel in inches.
Well,
So, yeah, but and this other thing too of trying other media. A sculptor. Well, it's just a little bit more than media. I mean, going from a three-dimensional world to a two-dimensional world. It's really good exercise for your brain. And I was just speaking with Barbara Healy for a podcast that's going to be coming up after yours, about printmaking, for example. I mean, that's one of the things that I really would love to have the opportunity to. I wish somebody would build a printmaking studio for other artists to use. Another, it's like miniature golf.
Yeah, my daughter's got that going out in Oakland.
Oh, really?
Yeah. They found some cheap space somehow, and a bunch of them chipped in on it, and they have a printmaking studio. We got a printmaking. Cindy is way into printmaking. Her painting is one thing, but boy, she just got way into the printmaking. I don't even know how many presses we have. We've got 2 or 3, maybe 4. I don't know, but there's two good working presses. And yeah, she does everything, that girl. She does handmade books. If you talk to her, you'll find that out. But printmaking, it's a good thing to bring up, because I'm definitely at a point in my life now that I want very simple, minimal process. And you're right, you can really get trapped with that with the sculpture. You start doing these big outside things, and you need a lot of people, and you need machines, and you need this, and you need this, and you need that. So these figures I'm excited about. I've never really been that drawn to the figure. I mean, I have painted and drawn it in school and sketched it at times, but far less focused on it now. I'm very focused on the gesture of a figure and what I can get out of it. And my sculptures are approachable for me. I have an old vintage power hammer, and I can shape the steel, draw it out very easily without killing myself. So hopefully I'll be back to that. And then for me, I stick them outside. They go in a rock outside. They're done. My poor wife, she's got paintings all over the place. I don't know what we're going to do. I really don't. I mean, she is so prolific. It's bad. It's
That's
really
another
bad.
story. That's
And
another
so I'm
story.
sticking with these little ones. She goes, you should do them bigger. And I'm like, nah, I'm doing this left-handed. I come in, I do it until I'm tired, and I got to do my physical therapy exercises. I got to do this, and that's it for the day, you know? And so I take that to my metalworking too. And so I don't call myself a blacksmith. I've looked at and worked with some, and I know some really great blacksmiths. And I've made, you know, many practical things, gates, railings, all kinds of stuff. But I realized with my metalwork, I wanted to stay away from that, because having done the traditional wooden boat building, and then I had a long run of really high-end quality made furniture and cabinetry. That process was just all so very tight, you know, and it is the blacksmithing, it can be very loose, but you're coming from this long history of this process, and people tend to stick with it. That's why you see a lot of the colonial stuff in blacksmithing. So with my metalworking, I really wanted to avoid that. And so I'm pretty happy. And it turns out really, when I was doing sculpture, I started doing sculpture, I was looking at the great American sculptors, the big outside things, Calder, Vesuvio, people like that. And so I immediately was became kind of geometric, because you're fabricating and sticking together shapes, and it finds this geometry. And I wasn't happy with it. And I changed from that into, and we didn't really have the setup. I got a much better setup for it here, for really pounding and moving metal in a more organic form. And so I've been drawn to creating organic form with the metal. And I really like that. There's not many people doing that. And it's because this is what I like. And I spent recently a year and a half working for a local sculptor. And he's done all these huge public work projects. And he's got a beautiful shop in Cushing, not far from here. So I worked for him for a year and a half. And it was this beautiful stainless steel sculpture, 28, 30 feet high. It's 3 pieces. It looks like a logo for fire flames. So it's like 3 twisting flames that go up with a light, simple light in the center of that. But the whole thing was built skin on a skeletal frame. And it was all figured out by computer. He figured it all out, but I was amazed. It was plotted off the floor. We had a full-size drawing, offset drawing of the thing taped to the floor, and we project up with a little laser pointer and build this spine for this thing. It started with that, and then build off the spine with pre-cut parts that were cut from the computer, on and on and on. And that's good for him. That's who he is. But his stuff it's all very very futuristic. It's smooth and shiny, and like it has this logo feel to it. And I'm like, nah, I like the weird organic stuff, and I love it because I get into bending a line, and it's just like drawing. I reduce it to a simple line, and I can look at that line for days. If I'm not happy with it, I'll avoid it and do something else, and I'll come back to it, and wham, there it is. I got it the way I want it.
Right.
And I move on. And so, and when I was at Swain, I think it was Peter Volkus.
That name rings a bell.
Yeah, he was a out of the box potter who did these huge plates, and they weren't functional at all. But you deliberately puncture them and push them and explode them and fire them that way. And it was the same kind of thing. He didn't want to go for that perfect, symmetrical, refined thing. He was looking for this, this random thing. And that's what I'm after. And it's because that's what I like. And it's one of the reasons I live here where I do. I have to have a horizon. I like the city, but I got to have a horizon every day, or mentally I can't take it. And I can look in any direction. I have a horizon. I do it throughout the day. And it's because I like the tree line. I like the rolling hills. I like the rocks. I like the pattern in the rocks. I like the way water moves on and on and on like that. And I got that from my sculptor teacher, Russell Daly. He was really good. He clashed with a lot of people. He's very kind of a cowboy type guy. But he was trying to bring modern, he really brought modern sculpture into Swain, because prior to that, it was do a clay bust and it sits on the shelf. And no, he was into, much more into all of it. But one of his big things was, and occasionally we would take a field trip and we'll go, well, I'm gonna go look at this bridge. Okay. And we go and look at this bridge nearby. And we'd all be like, oh, wow, that is just such a great thing. It's really cool the way it looks and everything. And then we go, okay, let's go look at another bridge. And it was like, oh God, that thing's fucking awful. It's like, what's wrong with that? It was like, develop a palette visually for what you see. And it turns out that in boats, wooden boats, it was wooden boats for me, you will realize most times that the things that look right, they work right because of that. And so I developed a palette and an eye for that. And that really transitioned into wooden boat building. When I started my apprenticeship, which is a long story, but a great school. And I'm so glad I went there when I did.
Are they still in
unbelievable concept. It was tuition free.
Yeah.
Just unbelievable. The guy was just an incredible educator, Lance Lee, who started this. And anyway,
Are they still in operation? Because I know a lot of them.
yeah, they're in Rockland.
Right.
They've changed, and it's now a tuition school. Unfortunately, I wouldn't have been able to go there because we came to Maine with $200. I had no money.
Right.
Weekends. But anyways, when I was right in the very beginning of my apprenticeship, I really got into it and got my hands on the boats. And from lofting, where you do a full-size drawing. And by the way, American small craft, there was just such a wealth of it. It was mind-blowing. Just mind-blowing all over the country. Just there's 5 kinds of these and 6 kinds of those and 20 kinds of these. It's, I mean, wow. But there was this thing, they talked about fairness, and look at the line and find the fairness in the line. Sometimes you couldn't see it. You take this batten and you deliberately pull it out of line until it looked like really bad, and go the other way until it looked really bad. But then you find this spot in between, you go, oh, there's that sweet curve. That's what Russell was trying to relate. That and so that clicked with me right away. And a lot of people had a lot of trouble with that concept starting out of fairness in things. And so I'm grateful to him and to Swain. And you get that through drawing, that really looking at stuff, you really begin to see things and you understand the fairness. And one of the things we did at Swain freshman year is we had to carve this chunk of elm, and everybody hated it, and it was create the single, simple, solid shape. And the teacher got hosed. It was, different sculpture teacher. It was three-dimensional design. And everybody complained and whined about it. But the idea was to make this smooth, and it's kind of going to wind up being somewhat of an egg shape, but it has a smooth, uninterrupted curve. And what can you do that so it's more than just an egg shape? And that's what that was about. It was finding fairness in form. That was a great lesson. It stuck with me, and I just stepped right into it with both. Like, yeah, I got fairness, and I got to the point with it, and it carried on into house carpentry as well.
Yeah,
that's a space. People working with me would say, James, we got to get James to look at that, because he's going to put his eye on it and say, that's not right, 20 feet over there or something, And so that was a great skill I developed. I still have it. And yeah, so my metalworking is like that I want to keep the spontaneity, that organic thing going in it. I don't see a lot of other people doing that.
No, there seems to be
some people who get model and clay and plaster and have castings made. You can get that because you're really getting this random thing with the hands going on.
Right.
There. But I try to do that with my hammering. I I can be tight and really good. I can do the colonial stuff, but I'd rather be loose and just let it flow and pay attention to this organic thing that happens. That's what I like to follow.
Yeah, one of the problems right now with education, it really starting to come to the forefront. And they just made an article about the second life of the Star Store in New Bedford. You know, the old department store that was converted into an annex to the College of Visual and Performing Arts for UMass Dartmouth. Everything is digital. Everything is there's no tangibility. There's no you know, one of the most valuable lessons I learned was in a foundation course where they plopped clay in our hands, just a chunk of clay, and they said, "Okay, I just want you to pop that clay up and down. Just pop it up and down. Just trust me. Just pop it up and down." And what's amazing is that within a couple of minutes or whatever, that jagged piece of clay, you know, anamorphic shape clay now is almost a perfect sphere. And that's just from the palm of your hand. And you did nothing else except have the clay touch the palm of your hand.
Yeah, yeah.
And all those other things that are just going by the wayside. And it's not old guys talking about the new guys. It's a method. It's you know.
Well, it's a skill set. It's a skill set.
Yeah.
There's a skill set there. And I've always felt that way with handmade stuff. I went through this with the woodworking and the cabinetry, and I shied away from, unless I really needed the money, doing things like kitchens, because people immediately go, "Oh, well, I can get a factory thing for this." And I'm like, yeah, go for it. It's like, I tell people right away, this is what I do. I do handmade stuff. It's going to last a long time, and it's going to be, I'll try my best. Most times it would work out that way. It's going to be exactly what you want. It's custom.
Right. And when you sell the house,
exactly what you want. There won't be another one like it.
Right.
That's the handmade skill. And we used to have that. And really, as bad as, you know, all the bad shit we got with colonial times, it was really a renaissance of handmade stuff in this country. All the woodworking, the shipbuilding, the ironwork, it just went on and on. These people were so skilled with their hands, which, by the way, is one of the things I fell in love with Maine right away, is people's hand skills are just, although that's changing now. We have a whole different generation of kids.
I mean, look at, you know, your mom was talking about survival, and I remember speaking to some old Mainer. It must have been one of my father's neighbors up in Caratunk, and they survived because there's there's clamming season, there's lobster season, there's Christmas wreath season, Christmas tree season, cranberry season, blueberry season. So you basically, that was what you did to pay the bills, but what you were was totally different from what you did.
Right.
And my brother, you know, my younger brother, the one that lives in Hancock, he went to school to be a tradesman, to be a contractor, and then he decided to join the Navy in '85. He went into submarines, and then he said, you know, he was really happy he joined the Navy, but he can't believe he did it during the biggest building boom of the 20th century, because it was just skyrocketed in '85. It was like huge building boom.
Yep.
And you know, he never really found himself until he got out of high school, which he did miserably at, and then went into New England Tech. I don't even know if it's still in business, but I saw a house that he built for a friend and neighbor. And this is my little brother. And I walked into this people's home, and there was a cypress pole holding up the whole, I mean, this hand-hewn cypress. I mean, the space, I'm not a sculptor, but the space, because I've been in homes where it's like, oh my God, it's like a rabbit warren of rooms. There's no flow. Or the rooms are like, you know, you go ranch houses, you know, everybody's all stuck on mid-century architecture and stuff. It's like, dude, if you go stretch and yawn, you can touch the ceiling. I mean, that's like oppressive to me, you know. But this,
I got 11-foot ceilings in my house.
Yeah, and I told him, I said, you know, the sense of space is like, he's like a natural born sculptor, and he doesn't even know it, you know. And it's really important, because at the School of Museum of Fine Arts, I don't remember the sculpture teacher, but he broke us up into two teams and gave us a bunch of cardboard, flat sheets of cardboard and tape. And he said, okay, this is the deal. You have to create a sculptural design, three-dimensional design, and you have to build it. And you have to, there's a race that we're going to run. And you're going to go down the hallways of the School of Museum of Fine Arts. And the trick is design, build, and run, because you're going to be timed, run down through this course with that piece of sculpture of yours. But with the intent that when you switch your sculpture with the, the A team is going to switch with the B team and vice versa, that you're going to totally screw them up and they can't get down the hallway. And it was like the most incredible lesson about space consciousness that I will ever experience, because you really had to be aware. Okay, we got a right-hand turn,
Yep.
to go into a stairwell hall, and then
Yep.
you got to go down. How
Yeah.
do you, it can't be bigger than this because it has to tumble. It has to go through the doors, it has to tumble and turn and twist at the same time. It was a
Yeah.
phenomenal. And
Yeah, that's the design engineering implementation thing right there, definitely.
yeah,
But I don't know where we'll wind up with the handmade thing. I mean, I just don't know. I mean, Cindy was a hand weaver she hung in there a long time. And she made beautiful cloths, beautiful clothing, blankets, all kinds of stuff. But eventually people stopped supporting it. It's too easy to go for
off the rack.
for off the rack cheap thing. But with the clothing, I bet almost everything that she's made, all those people still have that clothing. It's something, it's something special. They still have it. They wear it on special occasions, that kind of thing. So
let me tell you,
I don't know. And I wish there were more young kids into it. Maybe it will swing around. I mean, the pendulum swings one way and then the other. But we know, everybody knows now, like how hard it is just to get a carpenter or an electrician or a plumber, and
well, there's a whole other thing right there. And I don't mean to be rude to electricians, plumbers, and carpenters, but nearly anyone can learn, any intelligent person can learn how to be one.
Absolutely.
There's a huge difference. I have seen electricians who had this incredible design sense, and it's not just how things flow from the power source and spreads throughout the house kind of design. I'm talking the aesthetics. I mean, of the conduits being put in, how boxes are placed. Some people are just sloppy beyond belief, and other guys are just like exquisite in what they do. And it's just because you're a plumber and because the pipes are going to be where they are doesn't mean that you do it half-assed.
Plumbers have always been one of those guys.
Right,
I keep a close eye on those suckers. We call them beavers, The carpenters put all the wood up. The plumbers come in, they start
to it all out. Yeah.
I was like, wait a minute, I don't know how many of them I pulled the drill right out of their hand and said, give me that. I'm going to sharpen that because, it's sharpen up. No, it isn't. That's going to rip and make a horrible mess,
Yeah. And the
I've been lucky to work with some great people over the years. And so,
I mean, I've seen front porches on people's houses. I mean, why would you do that on a front porch? That's the part everybody sees. And you're looking at the spacing of the spindles or the balusters, because it's either no sense of aesthetics. One spindle more would have made that rhythm go a lot better, or it's just bad stuff, so the art.
My thing is
art education is a mechanical thing.
About quality, and that's something I realize more now that I'm older. Is like, I got a good conscience. I built above and beyond what people were paying me, that they would get the quality and everything that I did. And why? Because this planet's just filled with freaking junk. We don't need more junk.
Yeah.
And if your only motivation, which is, I know it was Cape Cod building, was probably, that when I went away, then they got the building boom down there. And prior to that, it was a recession going on in the building, but then it just exploded. And So it was all focused on money. Bang these houses out. We're doing one a day as quick as we can go. It's like bang, 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 bang.
Pete Seeger,
I'm like,
ticky
yeah,
tacky,
I'm
ticky
like, fuck
tacky.
that. I don't want to do that.
Yeah.
And so, we made a conscious choice, and we got away with it so far, that we were going to be less money focused. And we've been able to do that because we grow a lot of our own food. We do a lot of things in a different way. Because the wages were awful here in Maine, and when we came here, and we just said, yeah, well, we're going to get by with less money. And you know what? We've never lacked for anything, and we've actually had a very rich life.
Yeah,
It's all there. It's all there without embracing the consumerism, going to a job. My daughter would call a soul-sucking job that you hate, just make money.
Yeah.
And what, you get old and you die. It's like, screw that.
Yeah, no, I remember when I was in food service.
Yeah, that was Cape Cod. That was
Cape Cod, Labor
for me.
Day. That was it. It's like somebody
Yep.
just shut off all the lights and pull the shades down. And the old
I
rule of
grew
thumb
up with
was
that. I grew up with that. It was awful.
you'd go to unemployment, you'd file your claim, and then you'd go to a used bookstore, buy as many secondhand books as you could possibly afford, because that's what you're going to do all winter long. You're just going to hunker down and read. And then I remember the year where the McDonald's, where the heck was it? It's just after Wareham, I guess it was a newer McDonald's at that time. And it's now hiring. It's like, now hiring. This is like September 27th. This is something. What the heck are they hiring for? And then, so the Cape turned in from a 9-month, a 3-month basically economy in the summer into a 12-month economy. And all these older people. What's that? And all these older people went out there to retire. And you know what happens when people want to get away from it all? When they get there, they realize they don't have it all. And I remember people saying things like, you know how dark it gets out here at night? Yeah, it's the country. Oh, wow. Did you know there's hard water and soft water? Uh-huh. What was the other thing? There was like,
when my mother-in-law from Rhode Island first came up,
Yeah.
family, Cindy's family.
Yeah.
My mother-in-law just the whole time went on and on and on about how there were no streetlights. And we're like, yeah, well, we live in the country. Oh, but it's so dark. It's like, yeah, it's okay. It's okay.
Oh, you have to travel like 10 miles. So, well, here's a classic case. Okay. Caraton.
But now we have that. Thomaston has this huge, we got a super Walmart. We got a giant Lowe's. We got all that.
Yeah.
Cape Cod Route 28 development. It's just awful.
Yeah.
But it was inevitable. We had a good run there and we put it off. But when the economy comes back and it gets more aggressive again, they'll be building more crap all along Route 1.
That's unfortunate. Yeah.
I mean, there's no stopping it. It's awful. The towns embrace it. They don't get the prize out of it. They don't.
Well, they talk about the tax revenue, but the infrastructure now is so oppressive that they have to. It doesn't even out.
No, it's a lie. It's a lie. That whole big building thing is a lie. And here in our little town of Thomaston, when they took a whole big part of town on Route 1 and rezoned it aggressively and gave TIFs to Walmart and Lowe's, incremental tax financing. And so I went to the meetings, and one meeting I got up and I immediately said, you're not going to want to listen to me because I wasn't born here, but I want to tell you about where I grew up.
You're from away.
I'm from away. You'll always be from away, except for my daughter,
Yeah.
So anyways, I told him about Cape Cod, not very different population wise at that when growing up as Thomaston was then. I was, and I said, you're going to get this stuff fine. Keep it in that part of town, but get something out of it. Like really get something out of it. And they have done that more successfully in other towns. But if you don't ask for it, you won't get it. And not, I mean, these people, they all play hardball. I mean,
these natural.
I won't mention one of them hasn't paid taxes. They'd rather pay court fees than pay their tax
Well,
is
I
one
mean, the
of
other,
these new businesses. So,
Yeah.
and then next thing you know, and we knew it, you're going to have more police cruisers, you're going to have more cops, more this, more that. How are you going to pay for that? So our taxes have like doubled since that crap came in. It
Yeah.
hasn't been any benefit to me.
no.
Uh,
Plus, the money has been sucked out of town because Walmart's not invested in the town.
Sure, and
It's going to
right,
Arkansas.
all the great little hardware stores, all the great little stores, they're all gone, or most
Mhm.
of there's a few hanging in there. They're all gone, and they were far better, you know.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean,
I
it's
don't know where that will end. We're going through the whole country and the whole world. We're going through a terrible time, and hopefully we'll adjust somehow to it. But I come back to handmade stuff. That's all I got to say.
Well, don't forget, we had the whole Morris movement, you know, the you know, the backlash to the Industrial Revolution. And everything goes in cycles. You know, let me go back way to the very beginning when you're talking about boat building.
Yeah.
Thomason also built a lot of the Easton rigged wood trawlers for the fishing
Yes,
fleet,
I
right?
actually worked on one of them out of Hyannis, Cape Cod on the Sculptor.
Mhm.
It was built by the Wallace Yard, I believe.
The Wallace Yard.
I believe that's the name.
Yeah, because I
Um,
mean, I always think of my
and
stepfather's
a
boats.
huge wooden Easton rig trawler, and it was built like in the late 50s. This was 1985. I did one trip on it, and I loved the boat, but I was scared to death. I thought for sure I was going to get murdered in my sleep. You know, 13 guys,
Yeah.
crew, and pretty rough crowd, you know. But I was like, yeah, I'll try it. It's supposed to make great money, and I didn't make great money.
Arlo
figured
Guthrie.
out if I could do carpentry 100 hours a week and
Mhm.
sleep with my beautiful woman, you know, and
Yeah.
make the same amount of money. But that was a beautiful boat. It was launched here, and when they found that out, because they at some point it came out, well, where are you from? I was like, well, I'm from Dennis, and they called me a hairlegger, which I didn't understand what the hell
Yeah.
that was. And I said, I live in Thomaston, Maine. And they go, oh, that's where the ship was built. So I was like everybody's buddy. I was like everybody's good luck charm after that. You know, it was great. It was a big game changer, you know, because those guys, they're all macho, and they're not going to chum up with somebody. And like I say, it was a pretty rough crowd. I didn't go back because it was a lot of drug use that I was not into.
Yeah, that was an issue.
Running heavy machines, if
Yeah.
you're doing the chain work and the guy who's running the winch better be focusing on it, or I'm gonna be dead or worse,
Yeah,
you know,
yeah.
that kind of thing. But I love being out. I love being out to sea. And the Wallace Yard, yeah, they built a lot of big working wooden fishing boats. We got to see the last one launch. That was in early 80s. Here in Thomason.
One last question. You're talking about your family going all the way back. My stepsisters, their father's name is Grover, and I did some real looking, and they're a seafaring family. I think they're from that neck of the woods as well. And you know, sea captains, boat builders, the pirates,
Yeah.
the whole 9 yards.
The pirate thing is alive and well, especially down the peninsulas. It's a whole nother world, you know.
Well, all those coves were, you know, just great little places to abscond with things and people and such, and it was an economy.
Yep.
You know, the swamp fox and all that other stuff that they talk about. I'm going to start wrapping this up pretty soon, but
okay.
So the new work that you're doing, which you know, images will be provided in the podcast blog
Right.
on the website. There seems to also be an Asian aesthetic to them. You know, they're minimal, they're It's kind of hard to say, but there's like an Asian aesthetic.
Yeah,
You know?
yeah.
Where does that come from?
Yeah, I hadn't thought about that until you just said that. And when you did, I got goosebumps because I've always been fascinated with China. And as in fact, I have a fond memory of, I don't know how old I was, third or fourth grade. I came across this book on the Chinese, one of the Chinese dialects and the alphabet.
Mhm.
And I was like, oh, it might have been shortly after I learned our alphabet. I was like,
Mandarin
what's an A? It's
yeah.
like, I don't get it. And it was like, oh, you mean like each of these symbols is not just a letter, it's the whole concept. And I believe it or not, I got a brush and some ink, and I copied every letter and whatever, I don't know what, if it was Cantonese, maybe Cantonese, in the alphabet. And I've always wanted to go to China. And so, yeah, there's a minimalist thing in the way they, certainly in the way they paint. The perspective is different. I guess I've always been drawn to that. I have a great amount of respect for that. But I hadn't really thought about it in these paintings, but my minimalist thing is I've had low expectations, and I'm like, all right, you can't render with your right hand. And, I have other paintings, maybe you've seen, there's an album, Portals, on Facebook, an album section of big round paintings, and they're very rendered with the right hand, 4-foot round circles. And I was, with the left hand, I was like, nah, I got no expectations. This is going to be really clumsy. In fact, I came up with Donnie Beal that he'd gone through shoulder surgery, and he said, yeah, I did that left-handed thing. He said, it's really clumsy. And I had that in my head. It's like, it's okay. It's going to be really clumsy. Like, how can I do this? And it was like, well, what do I got? And usually what you need is right in front of you. I was like, well, geez, I got tape. I could use that in some ways. And I got these palette knives. It seemed like every time I picked up a brush, I got into trouble. So I was going after bigger, broader strokes. But then the narrative would come into things. And so, yeah, I'm not surprised at the Asian thing. And I've always loved the way they do their landscapes, their mountains and all that.
And the other thing too is the scale.
It's a one-off thing with a lot of them, especially with the pen and ink stuff, and the watercolor.
Yeah.
You got one shot at it. So it's a mindset.
Well,
it's a total mindset.
Going back to the calligraphy, there's only 10 strokes.
Is there?
Yeah.
Oh, wow. I didn't know that.
Yeah, I believe so. I mean, he's tip.
Yeah, well, I can
pressure
believe
up, tip, pressure down, pressure up to tip, so they're using, if you think of the pointedness of the brush, they're using every aspect of that.
Yes.
And even the dot is one of the strokes. That's just touching the tip of the brush to the paper.
Yeah.
So it is, and also to the scale of those pieces is 5 by 7s, for Pete's sakes. They could be 5 by 7 feet without any,
Yeah, Cindy comes in every day. She goes, you got to start doing these big, and I'm like, I don't know. I look at all your big paintings and we got no place for them. It's like, I guess so. If I can't do metal, then yeah, I guess so. Because the metal, I'm sticking it outside. But yeah, I could see that. I get to a point where I can smear with my left hand on a big strike. I got a lot of studies for big paintings if I want to go at them. And they would be very striking, because when you take that shot and you blow them up and you see them on the computer screen, you immediately think, oh, this is a big painting or something, but it isn't. So for me, it takes the pressure off with the process thing. That it's simple. 9 out of 10 times they're done start to finish. I don't go back to them. I sit here until they're done. And then I start another one. And it's like, yeah, I didn't get it. That's okay. I'm going to do another one. I don't want to get caught into this tweak it and work. Larger paintings, you work longer, Oh, I got to change that. I'm going to scrape that out, start over, all that. And so that's
actually, if you scale up the size of your brush. That's it. So they're
Yeah.
gonna take almost approximately the same
Well,
amount.
I'll be using a drywaller's
A drywall brush, yeah,
a
exactly.
big- or a blade. They're mostly different putty knives that I
Yeah.
use. That I
Yeah.
spread the paint with. Yeah,
Yeah.
I'll get a big grouting notch trowel and all that. I'll go through some
Hey,
paint.
you never know. You never know. The thing is, it's like we're all stuck in the same thing. You know, how many more paintings can we stuff under the bed, in the attic, in the basement, in the barn, in the garage?
Right.
Yeah.
I'm looking at your studio. You got a big rack of new ones ready to come
I
out.
got the yeah, and directly behind it is all of the pieces that, you know, are waiting to go to homes. You know, it's like an animal rescue league for paintings
Oh.
over here.
By the way, looking at that portrait behind you, I don't know if I may have mentioned it to you before, and I'll send you a link to it. Robert Shetterly's is the painter, and he's been doing a series called Americans Who Tell the Truth.
Oh, okay. I like to see
And I
that.
thought it's very similar to what you're doing when you look at history and different things.
Yeah.
He does these incredible portraits of famous people, Martin Luther King, on and on, and other people who are just incredible heroes and heroines throughout history that you never know about. And then he'll scratch into the wet paint a quote by them or something. And boy, he just keeps cranking them out. He does a traveling show. He goes, I don't know if he's been out of the country with it, but he certainly goes, he's been all around the country with these paintings.
This is my wife's great grandfather. He was the youngest child of his mom was one of the little girls who was sold away from their mother from a breeding plantation. And there's conjecture in the family about him passing because he was so fair-skinned. And so I told my wife and I told my sister-in-law I was taking a lot of liberties, and I've got him half black, almost like Harlequin.
Yeah, I see that. Yeah.
Because the title of the piece is still 3/5. So regardless of how much white he has in him, his blackness still only makes him 3/5 of a human being.
Yeah.
Because that was the 3/5 clause, and I forgot what the amendment was of the Constitution. So, you know, like, it's crap like that. So it's heady stuff. It's all heady stuff.
Well, I'm glad you're doing it. I try to keep focus on, especially with these images that present something different to people that.
Well, your wife, for example, I'm dying to meet her and speak with her.
Oh yeah, she's very thick. I brought it up with her, and she may or may not do it. She's struggling with a concussion.
Okay.
And so she has trouble sometimes getting overstimulated with the computer and things like that.
Okay.
But you definitely should.
I'm talking about in person.
To meet her when you come here.
Yeah.
She has this rich, she's half Armenian. And you would love it because she's investigated her family Armenian history. And it's all about these women. These women, they were incredibly powerful. They didn't give up. They kept going. All this extraordinary, horrible stuff. They
genocide.
went through with the genocide and how they got to this country. And it didn't come through her mother. She had her grandmother, who was one that had escaped, and she had Arabic tattooed on her forearm because she was enslaved and managed to escape by the Turks. It came through with Cindy. It started coming through with dreams. She literally had a dream when the phone was ringing, and she said, "Hey, this is your Yevki Moko," which is, I think maybe that's right, one of her aunts. "I just want you to remember, don't forget about us." And then there was another one where another ancestor came and they showed her this book. It had an actual title and it existed as a book that, you know, so it was kind of like tell our story. And so Cindy investigates that with her dream imagery of things, and it comes out of her, and she's very, very productive. She's too worried about if she's a good painter or not. And she's, you know, I actually started formal painting study when I was 13, and I could have been very successful as a Cape Cod seascaper painter. I was as a teenager. I made my first year's tuition to Swain selling seascapes on the Cape. But so she's always asking me for advice and this and that. And I'm like, I just keep my mouth shut. It's like, I'm not going to do it. It's like, you know, you got to decide. It's everybody has their own thing. If you get into the science of it, stop worrying about that. Just keep it flowing.
Yeah. Totally. I mean,
because that's her. And I think we all need to look at, you know, I finally realized I'm James Murdoch, and Russell said that to me. He said, someday you're going to say, oh, I'm James Murdoch. This is me, and this is what I do because I'm me, and we're all different. And I'm going through this with my daughter right now too, because it turns out she's now has decided she's an artist, and her painting skill is beyond Cindy and ours already. She's 23, you know, with no real instruction. And same thing. And thank God she's painting with acrylics, because I don't know anything about acrylics, so I can't offer her any advice.
Right.
I've tried to hook her up with people like Steve Remick, but that hasn't worked. But you know, anyways, I tell her, you know, don't ever go find what it is that you're about, because that's what is truly different. There's no one else in the universe like you, you know, and plug into that and let your art come out of that. And yes, I'm not saying you isolate and don't look at other stuff. That's always, you know, enriching to your skill level and to the way you think and see. That's all great stuff, but don't get caught up on it. Go more after what am I about, you know? And so the ones who got the long distance. Yeah. And I see it with all the Swain people. That's why I love Facebook, because there's all these artists on there. I love to see the art every day. It's like, now at the point, it's like I recognize them immediately. It's like, oh yeah, that's so-and-so, this so-and-so. That's great. And that's what I aspire for.
Well, I'm not even going to ask you the final question. We're really close to that time, because I don't have to, because you kind of already answered the unasked question, which is kind of Zenish in its own way.
It is.
But you know, the other thing is, as weird as it sounds, it's like, you know, you say I'm James Murdoch, and it's like I'm Ron Fortier, and it sounds odd until you really pay attention to what the hell you're saying.
Right.
And that's my takeaway from this conversation. And with that, I want to thank you. I'm going to wrap this up. I'll be right back. This is Ron Fortier with James L. Murdoch. We didn't ask him what the L was. That's Leonard. Okay. What Leonard? Okay.
Leonard.
James.
I mentioned that because that was my Mainer's grandfather's first name was Leonard Knight Thomas.
Okay.
So now
we know. And so that wraps up another episode of the In Focus podcast, brought to you by the artistsindex.com, sponsored by Heavenly Spirits Imports, and supported and collaborated by the Whaling Museum's Common Ground Project and the Massachusetts Cultural Council. So with that in mind, see you next week. Thanks. Bye-bye.
The South Coast Artist Index podcast is brought to you in part by Heavenly Spirits, who invites you to celebrate the art of life and creative communities everywhere. Learn more at heavenlyspirits.com. To learn more about the South Coast Artist Index, visit theartistindex.com. Find us on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube. Be the artist you believe you are, and let's take care of each other out there.